Hi, I'm the Sociology guy. Today I'm going to look at just the theory and methods for paper 3 for AQA Sociology. This is the paper that's going to take place on June the 12th, 2019. We're just going to look at the theory and methods questions because I'm going to look at them separately from the crime questions, which I've already done and is being uploaded at the moment. But it will also include some of the theory and methods questions that have been on paper 1 as well. There's 40 marks of theory and methods questions across the two papers. So it's worth having a look at all of those. Just to let you know, you can follow me at the Sociology Guy. You can also follow me on Instagram at the Sociology Guy, and you can also go to my website, thesociologyguy.com, where there's free revision resources, mind maps, knowledge organisers, exam tips, checklists, and model answers. Just a quick disclaimer, I've got no prior knowledge of what is going to be on the 2019 AQA A-level exams. I have no input into the writing of AQA A-level exams. When I do put questions up, I write them myself. I write the items myself as well. I don't use AQA questions. They're based on question types that are similar, but those that have not appeared on the specimen papers or on AS and A-level papers up until June 2019. The essay structures I use are one way of answering the question, and other approaches may still score full marks. What I will say is I don't do predictions. What I'm trying to do with these videos is just prepare you for questions you may not have seen in past papers or in mock exams. These are just some of the questions that haven't appeared yet, so it's worth being ready for them. So let's have a quick look at the specification. It's a massive specification. This is the full specification for A-level and specification for theory and methods questions. It's the one area that tends to get sort of like weaved in and out of other sections when you're being taught it. So often sort of like you don't actually realise that you're learning half of this stuff, but it's a massive section. It's a massive choice of questions that they could choose from. If we look at the other sections, usually it's 3 or 4 specification points that they can pick from, and here you're talking about nearly 12. So let's go through them. Quantitative and qualitative methods of research and research design. Could get asked, this is what you need to know. Sources of data, including questionnaires, interviews, participant and non-participant observation, experiments, documents, and official statistics. Okay, they don't really mention here things like longitudinal studies, case studies, content analysis. On the specification, it says questionnaires, interviews, participant, non-participant observation, experiments, documents, official stats. So they are the ones I would assume that you would get a 20-mark question on. Last year, it was advantages of unstructured interviews. The distinction between primary and secondary data and between quantitative and qualitative data. Okay, you could potentially get 10 markers on that. The relationship between positivism, interpretivism, and sociological methods, the nature of social facts. I would throw in with that as well realism. And the reason I sort of say realism and the realist approach is as a balance point. It's a really, really useful final paragraph if you've got a question on are positivist methods limited? Well, the middle ground is realism. The theoretical, practical, and ethical considerations influencing the choice of topic, choice of methods, and the conduct of research. Consensus theories, conflict theories, structural and social action theories. So the consensus theory is obviously functionalism and new right. Conflict, Marxism, feminism. Our structural theories, obviously Marxism, feminism, functionalism. And our social action theories, things like postmodernism, interactionism. The concepts of modernity and postmodernity in relation to sociological theory. I'll look at that in the debate in a minute. The nature of science and the extent to which sociology can be regarded as scientific. This is the one that sort of like I think sends shivers down people's spines. And it's actually a relatively easy essay. The relationship between theory and methods. Debates about subjectivity, objectivity, and value freedom. That is another one that is pretty difficult. Again, I would focus on this idea that the methods that are more subjective tend to be interactionist, interpretivist methods, and those that are more objective are positivist methods. Subjective methods are less scientific, objective methods more scientific. Value freedom. If something is value laden, it tends to be more subjective. If it's value free, it tends to be more objective. And then the relationship between sociology and social policy. So this looks at not only sort of like reasons why sociology should inform social policy and which theoretical approaches think that they should. So things like functionalism thinks it should support social policy. Liberal feminism would say social policy. Postmodernism would say possibly not, but it has done, if you look at the work of Anthony Giddens. Whereas there are some theories that say no, we shouldn't inform social policy. Marxists are kind of in the middle. Our realist theories are very much yes, we need to come up with solutions. So there's lots of different things that are in there that you could potentially be asked on, which makes it almost impossible, to think this is going to be on the paper. Some of the key debates. Now, I tend to see sort of like this paper being split into methods and into debates, as there is some methods in this debate side. But if you get a debates question or you get a methods question, these are the debates that you would get. How have theoretical approaches contributed to our understanding of society? In the specimen papers, we've seen Marxism and interpretivism come up as how have theoretical approaches. In the specimen papers, I should say. We've not seen one of these come up in the real exams yet. Are positivist or interpretivist methods best for investigating contemporary society? There has been a specimen paper question, as I said, on interpretivism, interactionism being almost interchangeable for AQA. Can sociologists influence social policy? There's a 10 marker on that. On one of the specimen papers. What influenced a sociologist's choice of methods and topic? When this came up on the old specification, this was quite a very confusingly worded question, which took 3 or 4 looks at before it asked you what what it was wanting. Essentially, it was asking you, why do Marxists prefer this method? Why do functionists prefer this method? Why did Marxists pick certain topics? Are structural theories limited for use in society today? I think that's quite a nice question to ask, and it's very much more in line with this kind of contemporary feel to the new specification. Can sociology be value free, and can it be objective? I think that would be a very troubling question for a lot of people. Are we living in a postmodern age? This was a question that was asked very, very late on in the old specification, but I actually like it as a question. I think it's a quite nice question for students to answer. There's lots of application of different ideas in sociology, and there's a nice little middle ground that's in there. Can sociology be a science? Of course, this is the one that was famously leaked last year, and it's also the one that sort of like all students study madly and then really get wound up when it doesn't appear. It's appeared as a 10 marker and as a 20 marker in the run of papers so far, so let's have a quick look at those. So the way I've set this out is we've got an outline and explain 2, and that's the top row. That's question 5 from paper 3. Evaluate, which is a 20 marker, which is question 6 on paper 3. But also this section can come up on paper 1, which is question 6. Again, outline and explain 2 reasons why. So if we look through on the first set of specimen papers, it was outline and explain 2 reasons why sociologists may not influence government policy. Okay, so that's something to look at. I've produced a kind of sheet on why sociology doesn't inform social policy, which you can get from the website. Evaluate the usefulness of interpretivist approaches to our understanding of society. Again, a pretty tough question. This would be the idea, sort of like not only of methodology, but also sort of like of the way they view society. Outline and explain 2 reasons why values may enter sociological research. So values such as career trajectories, is sociology scientific, personal values, ethics. Specimen paper 2, advantages of using official stats in sociological research. So you had to give 2 reasons of using official stats in sociological research. Good idea to actually use the advantage and then try and use a piece of research that uses official statistics to illustrate that advantage. Evaluate the usefulness of Marxist approaches in understanding society. A couple of schools of thought on how people might tackle this. Some people would say, right, what you've got to do is you've got to apply what Marxists think about education, what they think about family, what they think about religion, what they think about media, what they think about crime. Others will say, right, you need to talk about sort of the different branches of Marxism, so things like structural Marxism, humanistic Marxism, neo-Marxism. Yeah. Either way, I think we'll get you marks on that one. Outline and explain two arguments against the view that sociology is a science. So this could be the interpretivist argument, that sort of like sociology cannot be scientific. because sort of like human behaviour isn't cannot be measured in the same way as we would measure natural elements. That was on paper 1. Question 6 on the second set of specimen papers. Outline and explain 2 advantages of choosing overt participant observation as a source of data compared with covert participant observation. Okay, this is a question type we've not seen before, comparing one with another. Obviously in here, advantages using overt participation. Okay, you're not deceiving your participants. It can be a lot easier to take notes. And you could use examples of that. You could use examples, I think, of sort of like where covert participant observations have struggled and how it might be more useful to use an overt in that instance. Evaluate on this first paper, evaluate the view that conflict approaches are more useful than consensus approaches to our understanding of society. This is why I think you might get something like structural versus social action, because of this idea, understanding a society, and particularly understanding of contemporary society, which you see on June 18's question 6 from paper 1. Because I think it's quite a nice one. It's the idea that sort of like feminism and Marxism are more useful to understanding society than functionalism. Outline and explain 2 practical disadvantages of using historical documents. Okay. June 18, outline and explain 2 practical advantages of using secondary data. There's a lot of secondary data stuff in the outline and explain questions. Evaluate the view that sociology can and should be a science. Okay, both of these questions were on a paper that was leaked and therefore was replaced at short notice. There's usually a replacement paper always available, so that if something is leaked, a replacement paper comes in. It doesn't mean that they won't ask those questions again, because they haven't asked students, they haven't tested students on those questions, so they could potentially come up again. Paper 1, which wasn't paper 1, question 6, which wasn't leaked. 2 problems of using the functionist perspective to study today's society. If you apply that across, so 2 problems of Marxists, 2 problems of feminists, 2 problems of interactionists, 2 problems of postmodernity. Lots of different question types you could get on that, which I think is quite a broad question there. Okay, and the paper that was actually sat last year for paper 3, 2 disadvantages using lab experiments and sociological research, and the curveball, because not a lot of teachers, not a lot of students expected a 20 marker on methods only, and 2 advantages of using structured interviews in sociological research. Evaluate the advantages of using structured interviews in sociological research. A tip for kind of these evaluate the advantages questions: always start a paragraph with an advantage of, and then use a disadvantage to evaluate that. If you do it the other way around, you're answering the wrong question and you get limited marks. So the advantage of using structured interviews in sociological research: reliability, reliability and replicability, less training for the observer because we're asking questions, a relatively high response rate. It will give us, can be quite wide scale. We can make generalizations from it depending upon the sample. Okay, so there's lots of different things you can use in there. And June 2019, which I'm sure for copyright reasons I can't tell you what the question is, but you will know because you sat the paper, and you will see that there's lots and lots of secondary data that's come on there. So with your methods, start thinking about some primary sources. Make sure you've got those primary sources of data nailed down. So our observations, our interviews, structured interviews, unstructured interviews. Make sure you've got nailed down things like questionnaires. There's not a lot of come up on there on questionnaires, although questionnaires has been used a little bit more in the methods and context. Okay, so let's see what hasn't been asked. Lots of things. Quite simply, there's lots of things. There's so much scope for this question. They've not asked as a theory question functionalism or feminism. So I think knowing your functionalism and feminism going into this question would be really useful. Postmodernity and modernity. This is quite a nice question, because what you would put forward is you would put forward one side that yes, we are living in a postmodern age, and you might talk about things like greater family diversity, greater inclusion in society, greater risk, and then argue that no, actually we're still in a modern society because structures like class, gender and ethnicity still exist, and you can maybe point to educational results and say, yeah, working class are still underachieving, and we still see exploitation of certain groups. And then your middle ground is like late modernity, high modernity, and that's a real kind of drop the mic moment where you say, actually, we're not quite in post-modernity, we're not quite in modernity, but we are actually in late modernity. Sociology and social policy, of course, that could be a theoretical, it could be a question where they ask reasons why sociologists may not want them to inform social policy. It could be, why do sociologists get rejected? Why do sociological ideas get rejected? I've done a little sheet on that, and you can get them from the website. Value-free versus value-laden, I think would be a tough one. Structural versus social action, I think would be quite a nice question. Structural theory, so sort of like, why are functionalism, Marxism, feminism, are they dated? To look at today, are we better off looking at post-modernity and interactionism because we have a greater intersectionality in our society, we have more individuality, we have more diversity. Should we be looking at people as individuals rather than taking a top-down approach and looking at society as a whole because our society is so diverse? There is a middle ground for that one. It's called structuration. It was a theory that was put forward by Anthony Giddens, and that's well worth looking at for sort of like that kind of real smart-ass paragraph right at the end. Positivism, interpretivism. Okay, you've got your positivist arguments that sociology should be scientific. It should be looking to inform social policy. Versus our interpretivists, which sociologists are commentators. Sociologists need to get an insight. And then your middle ground of realism, which is where, yes, these big structural forces shape people's behavior, but they have the free will to act. And as realists, we need to be able to deal with the challenges that face lots of different groups in society. And of course, all of the different methods that are in there. It's very, very difficult, this paper. This 20-mark question, there is such a broad spectrum to choose from. I mean, you're looking at maybe 30 different possible essays that could come up as that 20 marker. For the 10 markers, again, I've done lots of little different sheets. I've done lots of model answers. If you go to the sociology.guy.com and you look under the model answers, and if you go to the revision notes section on my website, you can also see some of these like one kind of hit sheets that sort of try to cover some of the main topics. Best of luck with all of your exams. This will be sort of like obviously my final broadcast for the 2019 exams. I hope to hear from lots of you, and sort of like hopefully I've helped some of you with your exams, and hopefully sort of like in August I will be hearing about a lot of you getting really, really good grades. So thank you very much. Goodbye.